Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Brenda, are we ready to begin then?
We have 4 out of 5 board members, and we are fine with TAC, I think, as long as we have the quorum of the board. So,
Okay.
We have like 4 TAC members, so we will be joining. We are fine to proceed, Chair Shimoni, whenever you are ready.
Okay, very good. Let's go ahead and get started then. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being with us, and welcome to the board and to the TAC. Appreciate you all being here. This is our May 18th board and TAC joint meeting calling to order. I'd like to let the public know that the board may recess into executive session if we so choose to. And with that, can we have roll call?
Thank you, Chairman and members of the board and TAC. I'm going to start with board members. Coconino County, Geronimo Vasquez is excused, and we are expecting his alternate Judy Begay. I don't believe she's with us yet. City of Flagstaff, Adam Shimoni.
Present.
Thank you. City of Flagstaff, Miranda Sweet.
Present.
Thank you. NAU alternate Josh Mayer.
Present.
Thank you. CCC designee Tony Williams.
Present.
Thank you. And how do you see our? Okay, moving over to the TAC. We have Coconino County designee Tiffany Kerr.
Good morning, everyone. Present.
Good morning. Kim Musselman is excused. City of Flagstaff, Greg Clifton and Jeff Bowman are excused. City of Flagstaff citizen representative is currently vacant. Coconino County, Julian Thomas is excused. And we do have her newly appointed alternate, Carol Covington, with us. Carol?
And I too am present.
Thank you. NAU designee Erin Stum.
Hi, good morning, present.
Good morning. And NAU alternate Judy Maynard.
Present.
Thank you. CCC designee Kurt Stull.
Good morning, present.
Good morning. Our economic development representative, Gail Jackson. Are you with us, Gail? She is expected. Try to let you know when she joins. Metro Plan member Dave Wessel excused, and we should have alternate Jeff Meilbeck with us.
Present.
Thank you. We do have an NAU student, the ASNAU Vice President of Student Affairs, Kinsey Kavanaugh.
Present.
Thank you. And the ASNAU President has decided to be the alternate, Brendan Trashel, and he is excused today. We do have our attorney, Scott Holcomb, on the line. Scott?
Good morning, all.
Good morning. I'm not sure if Chris Beecher will also be joining us, our attorney that usually attends TAC meetings. If he may.
No, you only want one attorney in a room at a time, otherwise they start fighting.
Okay, thank you, Scott. And I do believe we have guest Cheryl Barlow from Coconino County with us today. Are you there, Cheryl?
I'm here. I'm Supervisor Begay.
Okay. She is still planning on joining us, correct?
She's en route.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I believe we have another guest with us from the City of Flagstaff, Rick Tatter.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. And we have staff in the training room and attending online. And I will turn it back to you, Chair Shoney.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Oh,
Hello, I'm sorry, Mr. Mooney, but this is Cheryl Barlow trying to hit my intercom. But Judy is on the line, and you did hear her. I'm just on my way in, so I'm standing by.
And I did just let Gail Jackson in as well. So thank you.
very good. Well, welcome everybody, and Supervisor Begay, welcome, and Carol, welcome to the team. Welcome to the TAC. Thanks for joining us. It's great to have you in our group and part of this meeting. And it's good to see everybody's faces and hear your voices. So we'll get started right away with our safety minute with Sam Shorts, our safety manager. Sam, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board and Transit Advisory Committee. The May Safety Minute for today is on heat awareness. So Governor Ducey has proclaimed next week, May 23rd to May 27th, as Arizona Heat Awareness Week. The summer heat is here again, and with it comes triple-digit temperatures that last through September. The high temperatures we experience in Arizona can be more than just unpleasant. Extreme heat can increase the risk of heat-related illnesses like heat exhaustion and heat stroke. In 2021, Arizona hospitals saw 2,873 heat-related emergency room visits and a record 552 deaths related to heat. If anyone is displaying symptoms of a heat-related illness, it is important to get them the proper medical attention before the problem turns into a heat stroke or heat-related illness. For people displaying symptoms of heat exhaustion, have them stop working and get to a shaded area. The affected person needs to consume water or an electrolyte replacing sports drink. Some safe practices to prevent heat-related illnesses are: drink plenty of water during strenuous activities, especially in hot environments. An average person sweats between roughly 27 to 47 ounces per hour during intense labor. To put that amount into perspective, an average water bottle holds 16.9 ounces. Take frequent breaks in the shade or indoors where it is cool. Wear clothing that is made of thin, breathable fabric and is light in color. Let's all take heat-related injuries seriously this summer. It may mean the difference between life and death. Thank you and welcome to the May Joint Board and TAC meeting.
Thank you, Sam. That was very, very well received. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So that brings us down to agenda item number 4 on our agenda for today, which is our fiscal year 2023 budget presentation. And I believe Heather is leading this one.
I am. Thank you, Chair Shimoni. Good morning, members of the Board of Directors and the Transit Advisory Committee. Unfortunately, Josh Stone is out, and so asked me to present the final segment of our 2023 budget presentation series. Next slide. So today's presentation is going to focus on our revenue sources that we will be using to cover all of the expenses that we've talked about in prior meetings, and then to look at our fund balance as it reflects our proposed budget. So the revenue sources that we use typically are on the screen. These are all included in the 2023 budget that we have presented to you. A couple of reminders: federal money, it is mostly formula funds, although we do reflect competitive grants that are either awarded or pending award. And I will just note, we never actually incur an expense that is pending a federal award until we have the federal award, but we reflect it in the budget. Otherwise, it would be an off-budget expenditure. The federal.
I'm not able to see, maybe I'm doing something wrong, but I'm not able to see any presentation. Am I?
Oh, that's interesting. I definitely can see it. Was that Miles speaking or?
Yeah, this is Miles. I'll sorry for the interruption. I'll go out and come back in. Excuse me.
Great. Thank you. So the
Yeah.
federal funding that we're going to review in 2023's budget presentation today, as well as our ending fund balance, does reflect the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And as a quick reminder, that was a 30% increase in year one and an average of 2% increase in each following year. City revenues, the city of Flagstaff is our fiscal agent for that transit tax. They collect, track, and project those revenues. So whenever we talk about City of Flagstaff funding, it is based on what the city has given us as those projections. For Northern Arizona University and Coconino County, they contribute to our programs out of their general fund. And so each year we have to apply for and request those funds, and we don't track any fund balance on those programs. And then we have our fares. Fares are based on history and ridership growth as an average fare per passenger. And I'll just footnote that fares does include all of our Eco Pass, our business pass programs. Next slide. Next, okay. In the process of our budget, we actually make budget requests to each of our partner agencies. So City of Flagstaff gets a request to fund bus, paratransit, planning, and taxi using the transit tax funding. NAU receives a request using their general fund, and then similarly Coconino County. Next slide. This is the revenue section of our 2023 budget. Again, you can see the same sources as already presented. 6.8 million out of local sources for operating and 11 million for capital projects. I just noticed there's a typo in the local source total by source column, so I apologize for that. And then Federal Transit Administration, we do receive funding appropriation that we use for operating. And then we have our capital. A significant portion of our capital next year is our Downtown Connection Center. And then we have Arizona Department of Transportation, which is a pass-through of federal funds that we use for taxi and van pool and some mobility management funding. So total revenues for fiscal year 2023 match the expenditure budgets we've been presenting, about $66 million. Next slide. I will note on that prior slide that the budget as it has been presented to you does not include the continuation of microtransit services. Those were introduced as pilots and have not been budgeted to continue, although we will talk today about strategies for keeping those programs. It also does not reflect our ask for Arizona state revenues for the Downtown Connection Center. If we receive those funds, they would then offset local and federal money. So the last thing that we will look at related to fiscal year 2023 budget is really what is our fund balance. And so a couple of reminders on the fund balance. Our financial plan requires us to be sustainable for 5 years, support current service levels, support asset management, preventative maintenance, provide for all committed local match for grants. So remember I said we have pending applications, but the financial plan does show the local match needed to spend any awarded applications, provide for capital replacement of vehicles and assets, and include a 25% operations fund balance. Our financial plan requires a 10% per the City of Flagstaff. The board and the TAC have previously asked us to demonstrate 25%, and so that is what we will do today. Next slide. The blue line represents our fund balance at the end of our projected fiscal year 2022 expenses, as well as the adoption of the proposed budget for 2023, and then the next 4 years out from that budget adoption. And I'll just note that in each future year, we are assuming all capital as it's been demonstrated in our capital improvement plan, and includes a 2% cost inflation year over year for operating cost. We do know that that is not what we're experiencing in 2023 with fuel being 68% higher than budgeted, and our wages, of course, we implemented a wage increase that significantly changed our operating budget. We still believe that everything that we're asking of the board with all the federal revenues that we received We still have a healthy fund balance for future services and capital programs. I will note that one of the items not in our capital program at this time, because it's still under design and development, is the Casper Headquarters Master Plan cost. And so we have the planning cost associated with that. In our budget, we do not have the construction of any outcome of that plan in our financial outlook. So I think that is the last slide. And so I will just pause to see if you have any questions or would like me to go back over any of that information regarding our fiscal year 2023 revenues and fund balance.
Thank you, Heather, for the presentation. TAC members, board members, comments, questions? Please jump in if you do.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff Miles back. And thank you for the report. I guess just a comment is it looks like a very healthy and highly sustainable fund balance. And the question is, Heather, are you going to be sharing performance metrics in another presentation today, or is that not on the agenda?
So performance metrics are not on the agenda. We are developing performance metrics in our Flagstaff in Motion 5-year transit plan. And so we won't be adopting any performance metrics goals until then. We will continue to track, monitor, and report on the prior set performance metrics, which is there's 4 for the bus, a couple for paratransit. I'm sorry, I don't have that information readily available. It will be included in next month's full budget adoption recommendation.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Miles. Any other questions or comments? Going once. All right, thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Let me grab my agenda. Okay, that brings us down to item number 5, which is a Flagstaff in Motion, a community transit plan with Busy Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the TAC and Transit Advisory Committee, I am Busy Collins, Transit Planner for Mountain Line. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And I'll be talking about Flagstaff in Motion, the 5-year transit plan. And I realize it's been a while since staff has brought this item to the board or TAC, and just wanted to give you a brief update to begin with. So since February, Mountain Line's been in negotiations with our consultant for the planning effort and have agreed to a contract modification. So moving forward, Mountain Line will complete this project without further effort by the consultant team. We think this is in the best interest of the project, as we know the system best, we know how to reach the riders the best, and we have a better grasp on what our needs are. So there's a brief update. I apologize, it's been some months, but happy to be here today. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So just a reminder on where we're at. We have completed stage 1 and 2. We have identified needs, and we're currently in stage 3. And the next step, or rather the last step in stage 3, is public involvement. And then stage 4 is really establishing that financial plan. And stage 5 is finalizing the plan and having, with some other details there on the slide. So really the culmination of the Flagstaff in Motion plan is to support a possible tax question in 2024. So that's the ultimate goal, really what we're looking for as the output of this plan. Next slide, please. And in the past 3 months, we have presented to a few community organizations listed here, and we've also coordinated with W.L. Gore and Associates to release a commuter survey. There's a little screenshot there for their workforce. So really understanding how they get to work, if they're interested in other options, if they have transportation needs or just interests. And if there are needs or interests, we look forward to identifying transportation solutions with W.L. Gore and then incorporate those into the plan. So I'm really excited to have made some inroads with a major employer in the Flagstaff area. and have this part of the plan outcomes. And I'm also offering the survey to Purina, as that is also a major employer that is not currently on the transit network. And any other interested employers through business development groups, including Econa. And so I just wanted to pause briefly and see if there's any, if the board or TAC thinks that there's any other key employers to target on transit needs and interests.
Thank you, Busy. You know, one that comes to my mind, just thinking about the pilot that we have to the airport. I'm not sure if this is relevant or connected to what we're talking about today here, but just in relation to those businesses in that corridor that we were potentially reaching out to, Joy-Con, I'm trying to remember who else, but I'm just wondering if those businesses should also be added to this list. But Busy, honestly, take that or leave that. I trust your expertise.
Thanks. I think that's a great idea. Thank you. Any other, I see a hand raised, TJ? Oh, sorry. Hi, Gail.
Hi, thank you. So I have a question for you, Busy. I'll be honest, we've had more conversations about businesses that are expanding and looking at locations where there's already existing bus service. I'll say it's now something that's a part of the conversation where it hasn't always been in the past. And I'm just curious, moving forward, is there any sort of, because a lot of times when employers are engaging in this conversation, the financial piece falls on them. And so they have to come up with the $1 million or the $2 million. And I'm just wondering if there's any way, and this might be way futuristic, that NAPTA or Mountain Line could have a position where that's all they do is focus on grants or something to help with that cost. Because the employees are interested. It's that financial piece that's always a hard one to get over, similar to the airport, as Chair Shimoni mentioned. So can you help me understand that a little bit?
Absolutely, Gail. That's a really great question. So we, as you're probably aware, Mountain Line does pursue a lot of grants, and grants are really excellent at funding capital, buses, charging infrastructure, facilities, really good at funding capital. However, operations are typically, if not the majority of grants, are just ineligible for operations funding. So that's the ongoing component. I will say that the microtransit pilot that Estella is leading is a rare example where they do cover operational expenses, and even more rare, they're covering 100% of operational expenses. We just don't see that. So that, I agree, it's a real big challenge for us to find those grants, or even that there's grants available, and then try to secure them. I hear you. I agree that it's exciting to have businesses really interested. It's always hard to pay for those interests and those services. So, I mean, we'll always continue to look out for opportunities and seek partnerships to capitalize on those opportunities. I'll just say that they're very few and far between.
I appreciate hearing that. And you guys do have a stellar reputation for going after grants, securing them, implementing them, all of those things. But I think we could get more employers on board if they didn't have to participate with the funding piece so much. So just thought I would throw that out there.
Thank you.
And quick follow-up thought, and Heather, I see you raise your hand. Just, businesses pay for parking. I'm curious what kind of a payment they make to accommodate their employees and their tenants and whatnot through parking, through accommodating for the car. I wonder if there's some data we can pull that shows, the cost that they're paying, and kind of make a pitch for why this is, a better option, or, however it plays out. But Heather, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Shimoni, and thank you, Advisor Jackson, for the question. I want to make sure that we have addressed one essence of the question, which was, could Mountain Line provide a staff person to assist with grant writing? And I just want to say, I think we're always available and happy to assist. I don't know that we as a transit system will have access to a grant specifically to implement a route other than the grants we already have for operating, as Busy kind of pointed out. But we are very open to co-writing, leading efforts to help businesses write grants if they have grant opportunities available to them through their own mechanisms of, I'm a hospital, and so I have these sources available to me. We're happy to support either the grant writing or participate in the grant writing. So I wanted to just follow up with what Busy said and say, yes, we are happy to be available and assist in whatever way possible for businesses that are looking at grant opportunities to help pay for expansion of transit services because of where they're locating their business. So I hope, Advisor Jackson, that helps a little bit with that portion of your question.
Yeah, it does. I just was hoping that maybe there was something I was missing that might help get some more funding so that we can have more transit for the employers. So we'll just keep working on it. So thank you.
Since you brought up NAH, Heather, would that be another good partner to add to this list, Busy? I mean, I'm sure we can come up with a whole bunch of businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Mountain Line is in regular contact with NAH, especially them moving outside of the current transit network. But absolutely, as a major employer in the area, that does make a lot of sense. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions before Busy continues?
Okay, seeing none, thank you for those suggestions. And if you have others that you think of later, I am all ears. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So this should look familiar. This is where we left off in February with you last. So we do have 3 scenarios, basically just 3 different lists of transit improvements, and staff is currently working to create public materials of these various improvements so they can review and prioritize them to arrive at that recommended scenario for all short, medium, and long-term implementation. And so this just a reminder of where we left off last, and yeah, currently working on public materials. Next slide, please. And today I'm seeking guidance from the board and TAC on the public involvement plan. So here is the remaining 3 stages with a high-level timeline for each of the stages, with us completing in March with a final plan. And so the list on the right is the original proposal for public involvement, and that was proposed to be in each of the 3 remaining stages, with that telephone survey of likely voters being conducted only in the 5th stage, final stage. And that activity would use draft final recommendations to confirm improvements and messaging to make sure that Mountain Line's on target should we bring a tax question to the voters. And so next slide, please. My question is, does the board really value having all of these public outreach efforts? We are currently, it's really targeting bus riders, current users, non-riders, and voters. And just want to understand if the board and TAC think that there's more value in one of these groups, just trying to streamline and focus our process to make sure that we can get through the plan in a reasonable amount of time, and that we're reaching the people that have the most impact on our ultimate goal. And I will first say that I find value in all of these public outreach activities, so it's really hard for me to consider having any streamline, but I definitely want to hear from you all. As you saw in our previous presentations, that engagement, it hasn't been exceptional. Our surveys got around 150 participants. We did have mailers out to our low income and minority neighborhoods, just encouraging them to go to the website and participate. However, I wouldn't say our engagement has been incredibly robust so far. So I'll just caveat that. I think we're all aware of that. So Rhonda, if you would please put up the poll question, and so I'm asking again, where to focus efforts to help staff streamline this project, the public involvement component, and get the project complete. And so I'm just looking if you feel like there's one group in particular that's most important. I'll just pause while everybody completes that poll. And Rhonda, I think you can see the number of participants. Does it look like we have some good participation from the board and TAC on answers?
I can see 16 have completed out of 26, but some of those are employees. So hopefully board and TAC has completed it.
Awesome. I'm going to give just 5 more seconds to complete the poll. And then Rhonda, you can close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rhonda, if you would close that poll and show us the results, please. Great. So I'm seeing 56%, the highest result is the riders and users. So making sure that we really get to our current riders and users to make sure that improvements make the most sense and get that public involvement and feedback from them. And then second is voters at 31% and never riders at 13%. I'm curious if anybody just had any comments about their vote, if you wanted to just explain why you chose riders over never riders or anything like that.
Miles, jump in.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, busy. I appreciate the questions here, and I said voters, and I go back to this book, Good to Great by Jim Collins that I know Heather and I read years ago. And the point is, what are you passionate about? Which Mountain Lion's got that down. What do you do better than anybody else? Which Mountain Lion's got that down. And what drives your economic engine? And transit is kind of a unique creature because what drives our economic engine is the perception of 51% of the voting public. I mean, period. And I absolutely get and respect and appreciate wanting to know what riders and users think. I mean, that's pure, that's true. We have to do that. And the practical reality is riders and users can love us, but unless 51% of the voting public loves us, there is no transit system.
That's a really excellent point. Thanks, Miles.
Thank you.
Other thoughts? Come on, folks, wake up. Let's get that coffee going.
Yeah, I'd definitely love to hear anybody from the riders users perspective, knowing that they're currently riding. Do you just see that improvements will, increase the number of trips that people are taking that are currently using transit? I mean, curious what the justification there is.
So I chose riders personally, and I thought that, we got to start with our riders. And if we're not working to please them, then who are we working to please? And I think Miles makes a good point about how this is a different beast and Mountain Lion is a different beast. But if we're improving, our systems, I think we need to start with those who are using it and not just be, a bus that might be fairly empty that shows up once an hour. So that was my logic, is take what we have and make it better, but focusing in on who it is that we're serving. But other board members, other TAC members, Tony, do you have any thoughts? Put you on the spot. Start calling names.
Chairman Shimoni, actually I do. I selected the writers users for many of the reasons that you had commented on, Adam. But I also agree with Miles's comments about the voters. I selected the writers users because getting a good return on your outreach is probably the best possibility with the existing writers and users. We'll have a better return on that effort as opposed to other constituency groups. And I certainly know the importance of being able to also stay connected with the voters, because at the end of the day, lots of our continued success is going to be dependent on having that ongoing support from the voters in the county in particular. So, but the reason I picked writers is I just thought that was going to be the biggest return on investment and time in getting quality feedback in surveys and outreach.
Thank you for that. And it's like, from riders being happy will come new riders. If they're happy and they're utilizing our services, they will spread the word. If they're not happy, they will tell their friends not to use it, and their peers. So I agree. And I almost feel like the non-riders are maybe the population that we might be able to put less of a focus on. Director Sweet, jump in.
I'm having some internet issues, so I apologize if I'm going in and out. I picked the writers as well. I just think making what we have as strong as possible and then going from there is going to make sure that we have the best bang for our buck. I appreciate everyone's comments and agree with everybody, but I do feel like making sure what we already have is strong is kind of the best way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Gail. I think I saw your hand up.
It was, but I put it down. I actually went for the non-writers only because I was thinking more of the masses. And I feel like if you want people to vote for something, then it needs to affect them in some way. And if the non-writers don't know about transit or they're not using it, well, why is that? And hopefully then you can engage them as well. It's great to have a really awesome transit system for a few, but I think focusing on that group as well is important. So it was really hard to choose between all three, but that's why I chose that one.
Thank you for sharing. Chair Stum, jump on in. I know your hand's not up,
Well,
but
I wasn't. Hey, good morning. So I didn't vote for, because the question was who picked writers or non-writers. I didn't. I picked voters, and here's why. At the end of the day, any improvement, if we're going to go back out to the voter, those are the ones that we kind of need to convince and make sure that they are on board so that we can continue to move things forward. I think had I been asked a second, I would have said non-riders within the current service area, because my concern about asking non-riders, a lot of non-riders are, I live in Doney, I live in Kachina, I live in Belmont. So it would really have to be targeted to non-riders who are along an existing route, in my opinion. So there are my thoughts.
I'm glad I called on you. And folks, I do want to encourage folks to turn their cameras on if they'd like to be part of the discussion, so that we feel like we're together, not just in this weird echo chamber. Director Mayor, please jump in.
Thank you, Chair. So I picked voters as well, but we have to realize that these groups are not exclusive groups, right? There's going to be plenty of overlap between the three. But like with what Miles said, ultimately the voters hold the purse strings, right? And if ultimately we want to be able to branch out and reach those potential non-users that could be converted to users, we're going to have to rely on the voters to allow us to do that. So that's why I picked my group, but understanding that there's plenty of writers and not writers in the voting group.
Very good. Thank you for that. Miles, do you have an additional thought you'd like to share?
I don't. I just turned on my camera at your request.
No, I appreciate that. Busy, I can keep heckling people to comment if you'd like me to.
I thought that was, thanks for everybody's comments. That was really helpful to understand your vote. Honestly, it surprised me a little bit and now I completely understand. And I agree with everybody's comments. So thank you so much. And thank you, Chair Shimoni, for heckling the group. That was very helpful. But I think we can move on to the next slide. Thanks again for your feedback. I do have one more question. Next slide, please, Rhonda. I am just looking for, oh, sorry, next slide, please, Rhonda. Thank you. Do you have suggestions on groups? Oh, sorry, back one. Sorry about that. Do you have suggestions on groups to get feedback from or methods of outreach? So I definitely heard that writers, I completely agree. Writers are have a great return on investment. We know how to get a hold of them. They're a bit of a captive audience when we seek them out on the bus and at the downtown convention center. Voters, we have awesome tools with global local visions. Dr. Fred Sullup, his work is incredibly valuable to give us insights into the voters' opinion. So I think we have a couple methods, but I would love to hear if there's other groups or methods that staff should consider in our public outreach efforts.
Who has a thought?
And maybe y'all think I'm just right on target.
Gail, I'm almost wondering if you have any good ideas to help reach some of the audience.
I have nothing to add. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, we can move past this. I mean, if you have other ideas, I'm all ears again. Thanks again for your feedback. This is my last slide. Actually, I have one more slide, a pretty picture. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And then that is my final slide. Again, thanks for your discussion today. This was incredibly helpful to guide staff on next steps for the Flagstaff in Motion project. And I look forward to talking with you again soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Busy. Okay, I'm just moving around my place. So that brings us to our next agenda item. Right, Busy, we're complete?
Yes, thank you, Chair Shimoni.
Very good. So this is item number 6, which is our future of microtransit with Estella Hollander, our mobility planner.
Thank you, Chair Shimoni, members of the board and TAC. Happy to be here. Estella Hollander, mobility planner with Mountain Line. Next slide, please. And so today's presentation, I'm going to provide a bit of an update on our 2 microtransit pilots, but also seek your feedback on next steps, especially the airport service. So a little bit of a recap. Microtransit is an on-demand transportation solution. So you can hail trips either through an app, there's a calling option, but they're meant to be same-day trips. And so we have 2 pilots currently going on. First is the Huntington Industrial Corridor, and this launched November 1st. And then second was airport service, which launched March 1st. Next slide, please. And so first, I'll be focusing solely on the Huntington Industrial Corridor. So we're not, bouncing in between the 2 pilots. So this first one, again, this launched November 1st and really focused on the Huntington Industrial area. So this includes the shelter, the food bank, Hajoni, the guidance center, really meant to bring better access to this area, which on the map shown here is kind of this golden rectangle area. So people can move, freely, get trips in and out of this area, but also connects people to the broader transportation system. So there's a few kind of circles around various bus stops. So people can, again, get trips to like the Walmart on the east side, as well as our mall connection center. And this pilot is a commingled service with paratransit, meaning one vehicle, so our paratransit vehicles can pick up both a paratransit rider and a microtransit rider in the same vehicle. And this has really helped us reduce costs, and we're not having to put a dedicated vehicle out there. The fare has been $1. I also have the hours of service on here. And again, you can book a ride through an app, website, or calling option. Next slide, please. So to provide a bit of an update on the performance measures, so total since November through April, we've had 803 boardings. As you can see, there's been a little bit of a dip in April. And this, I think, is partly due to, which is great news, that the new hotel on Route 66 opened up, but actually 10 of our regular riders have now moved to this more permanent housing solution, which now they're on a fixed route. So they haven't actually need this GO service anymore, which again, I think in general is great, providing more housing and providing better access to our fixed route system. But that is partly why there's a bit of a dip in April. I also want to point out here on the third bullet, which is the average rider or average request per rider, which is 11, which is really high in my opinion. I think it really shows that people are using this, could be like twice a day, that type of thing, several times a week. So I think that that's really great, showing that people are using it as kind of their reliable transportation service. And just to point out a few top origin destination pairs. So all of these include the shelter. Really, the shelter has been our main ridership. So the shelter to the mall connection center, as well as to Walmart, the Route 66 and Fanning bus stops to the shelter, and again, mall connection center back to the shelter. So it's really showing that people are definitely broadening to the larger transit system by connecting to our mall connection center, which has 3 routes. But as well as Walmart, which are the bus stops on there, but which are near Walmart. Next slide, please. And so for some commingled metrics, meaning again, bringing together paratransit and the microtransit together, I want to highlight this kind of middle chart on here, which shows our trips per hour. So this is how many kind of passengers and trips that we're doing in an hour. So in February, it kind of remained the same for our combined trips per hour. So again, combining both the microtransit and the paratransit. But in March, it increased by 17%, and April was 8%, which again, these are not, it's just by a couple percentage. It's not, super astounding, but hopefully I think it's at least showing that as, ridership hopefully grows as well, and that this program has not decreased our trips per hour, which I think is great news. So it is showing that the vehicles out there are improving their productivity. And then that last chart on here, so commingled trips. So again, when 2 riders are in the same vehicle from different programs, it's about 3%, which isn't very high. But I think it's showing that these rides are filling in paratransit downtime, which essentially with our paratransit program, they might drop someone off and they may have half an hour, sometimes even an hour and a half till their next paratransit pickup. So it's showing that these microtransit rides are actually kind of filling in these gaps, which is, again, just being more productive with the vehicles that are out on the street. Next slide, please. In this graph, I know there's a lot of lines, a lot going on, but essentially the punchline is showing, so the green lines on here are paratransit and the blue are the microtransit. And this basically is showing how many trips and kind of each actually 15 minutes, kind of when our peaks. There's definitely some clear peaks in the paratransit, so kind of when the green lines are very high. But I wanted to point out a few times of day, again, showing that the blue lines are actually higher than the paratransit, meaning that these microtransit are again filling in these gaps of service, which is definitely a goal, was one of the goals of this microtransit pilot. Next slide, please. So some financials, I think Busy alluded to it in her presentation. So we did receive $300,000 in grant funding, and this included both the planning and the operations of a microtransit. But this is just one-time funding for this pilot, which the funds actually expire at the end of June. So far, so from November to April, we've spent roughly about $235,000 in paratransit operations, which this is not funded through the grant. But then in my Mountain Line Go, it's around $24,000, which was grant funded. So this is about 11% increase, kind of an incremental increase of operations. And this is mostly for additional evening hours. So Mountain Line Go goes till 6 p.m. and usually paratransit ends around 4 p.m. So kind of those extra couple hours in the evening, as well as extended weekend hours. Since on weekends, microtransit goes from 8 to 5, and usually paratransit is much less. So I think due to the commingling, so again, being able to, mix these different programs, it is just a small kind of incremental increase in terms of operations. Next slide, please. And so for next steps, we received board direction in February to continue this pilot, really, due to just the equity that it brings to an area that serves a lot of, again, the shelter, a lot of kind of vulnerable populations. So we have, as the suggestion from board member Vasquez has applied to Coconino County's American Rescue Plan funds, still pending. We don't know the results of that yet. And always searching for other grant opportunities to fund. But again, as it's been discussed, operations can be challenging to fund on a long-term basis. As well as long-term, discuss kind of a fare discussion. So we, through this grant funds, will be able to install fare equipment on our vans. Currently, they don't have any fare box or any, validators. So our, 30-day pass does not work on there. So we will be able to install the fare equipment on our paratransit vans. So be able to discuss kind of a long-term fare discussion of maybe how those fares might change in the future after this pilot period ends. So just want to pause there. This part of the presentation was more of an update, but want to first see if there's any questions or comments regarding the Huntington Industrial pilot.
Stella, thank you so much. Board members, TAC members, new TAC members, please do jump in. Carol and I'm sorry, I'm spacing on the other individual. Kinsey, yes. Please do jump in if you have any thoughts or questions. There's no such thing as a bad question here. Miles, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Estella, I'm really excited about this. I think the marketing is great. The concept is great and creative. The data that you're managing, to show exactly what the impacts are in terms of origin, destination, and impacts on productivity changes, I think is fantastic and a really exciting model. So I'm looking forward to learning more.
Yeah. And I guess I do want to ask, again, the direction from the board in February was, sorry, am I cutting someone off? Oh, okay, I think there's just some feedback. Just wanted to ask, from the board direction in February, just want to make sure, that is still, I guess, accurate and still, the direction to continue this pilot.
Carol, did you have any thoughts or questions you'd like to add? Or were you just joining the?
No, I'm getting my sea legs here. Thank you.
Very good. Other thoughts from the TAC, perhaps, on this direction? Co-Chair Stom, what do you think? Or Chair Stom?
No, I can just tell you anecdotally, I know a couple people that have used it to go to the airport and it was very well received. So I do think it's a good thing to keep moving forward with.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, then the next part of this presentation is really, focusing on that airport microtransit pilot. And then we will be having a poll question and some discussion after. So next slide, please, Rhonda. So switching gears now, Mountain Line Go Airport. So this is a pilot program that launched March 1st. So it's only been running for a couple months. But essentially, someone can get picked up anywhere in city limits and then dropped off at the airport and vice versa. So picked up at the airport and then dropped off anywhere in city limits. So essentially kind of like a door-to-door service. The fare is $2 per person. Similar payments, so either through cash, you can also do a credit card through the app. And to book a ride can be through app, calling option, or a website. Next slide, please. So some performance metrics, again, only been running for a couple months, but I will say in the beginning, it did start very slow, but then has definitely dramatically started to pick up. For this program, we don't really have any benchmarks or I guess, ridership benchmarks that we hope to meet just because it was such a new service and just kind of wanted to get it started. But I think it has started definitely to increase. I know May data isn't on there, but, have already had around 70 rides for the month. So I think it might surpass April's ridership. That second bullet, active riders, so 123, that means 123 people have used the service. That's, I feel like that is quite a few people that have used this service. Some top pickups and drop-offs have been the Courtyard by Marriott. So that's the one kind of south of town on, is it Woodlands Village? That has been a top one, as well as the Holiday Inn Express on Huntington Drive, the Amtrak station, as well as University Heights neighborhood and Cheshire. So I think the fact that it is going to a lot of hotels and things showing that tourists are using this. So I think it shows that some of our marketing efforts have really been targeting tourists. So they've been able to utilize this service. Another item is in terms of when people are taking rides, they have mostly been in kind of these morning hours. So from like 4:30 to 6 a.m. So trying to meet, I think there's a 7 a.m. flight, if I'm not mistaken. So to get these early morning flights, as well as there's been a lot of popularity around kind of the 4:30 to 5 p.m. time. Excellent. Next slide, please. So doing some of these commingled metrics. So this is not including the Huntington pilot. It's really just paratransit and the airport service. So showing that middle chart, as you can see, kind of those trips per hour has decreased a bit because the airport has such extended hours. So it goes till 9:30 at night. We haven't had a lot of trips during kind of these later night hours. It also goes potentially to 4:30 in the morning. I will note 4:30 to 6:30 a.m. You do have to reserve the night before. So we're not always operating if no one has requested a ride the night before. This service is very new. So I think, as ridership would increase, these trips per hour metrics would look a lot better. But, it has decreased a bit of kind of that productivity, at least mostly I'd say during those evening hours, as well as weekend. We do have an additional vehicle on the road as well during weekend. Commingled trips, that bottom chart, again, 1% in that first month, but then went back to like 3%. So very similar to that other pilot. So not a ton, which I think is showing that it is kind of more of the morning hour and kind of these potentially the later time or when, and kind of filling in some of that downtime. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So financials. So this I estimated kind of how much it would potentially cost to continue this pilot on an annual basis. And this is using our cost per hour of 119, which is our current paratransit, or for our FY23 paratransit cost per hour. So just to really show kind of the true cost of how much it would cost to, again, sustain this program. And this is for an additional, those morning hours, evening hours, so from around that 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. and additional weekend hours, as well as I think we would need an additional vehicle in the morning because ridership, that is kind of the peak time, and we don't want to, have to bump paratransit rides or anything like that. So I think would have some additional hours in the morning. So it ends up being, over $538,000 annually to operate. Paratransit operations, just for some reference, in our FY23 budget is like $580,000. So it's essentially doubling, that budget to continue this pilot operationally. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is kind of switching gears. Before we talk a bit about goals, just want to pause, I think especially on that financial piece. If there's any thoughts, questions, is it surprising, things like that.
No, Stella, I just took that number and I divided by 12 for each month. And then I divided by 200 passengers per month if we were to get there. I think it was $224 per person to reach that break-even point. I do wonder with that financial number, if we were to isolate the key hours of which those users from the airport would utilize this service, could we cut that down significantly perhaps? Or is that something you explored?
So yeah, to clarify, those hours are really from like 4:30 to 6:30 a.m., 4 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. And then I do have a whole dedicated vehicle on the weekend. So that's, I think it was 16 hours, if I'm not mistaken. And then a small chunk from 4:30 to 6:30 again to have an additional vehicle. I think we could think about maybe changing some of the weekend. Maybe we don't need a full chunk of hours. But I think it is just kind of these extra hours that pays for it.
Very good. Let's go to Heather, and then I think Chair Stom had her hand up.
Thank you. I wanted to just add on to what Estella shared, because that is a large price tag and it can be quite shocking, especially Chair Shimoni, when you break it down the way that you did. We know it's expensive. We've said that about paratransit for a very long time. So that very individualized service is expensive. By commingling, we're sharing some cost, and that will help us. And I think what Estelle is really illustrating is not maximizing some of that mingling option. Another thing that we continue to explore is how do we make it possible to broker these trips to the local taxi companies, the local TNCs, and that's a relationship we've not yet developed, but we know long-term if we're going to keep microtransit, it is going to be a viable option to help us control cost. So those are just other ideas that if we keep this program, that we will continue to explore, since we know that it's a program people will use. So I just wanted to add that to that financial thinking.
Chair Stom, did you have something to add?
I mean, you did the math, Adam, because I was going to just ask, I mean, $2 is extremely inexpensive, and I think definitely has room, you know, to have the rider cover a little bit more cost so it could help control that annual cost. I don't think anybody's going to pay $229. But to Heather's point, the more people that use the service, that would then help to reduce the cost per hour. I still think it's a great service to offer, so I'd like us to consider looking at ways that might be pursued.
Thank you. Miles.
Thank you. I appreciate the critical thinking and the financial analysis. One of my questions was about the goals of the program, and I see some of them up on the screen. I know Estella is going to talk more about them in a minute. I guess I find myself just kind of piling on here because I did the math a different way in terms of the cost per trip. If the hourly cost is $119 an hour and we're doing 1.5 trips, that's $77 per trip. And not only is that really expensive, there's something about the equity. If we have somebody who's going to the airport and flying on an airplane, they can afford to fly on an airplane. Whereas the paratransit model is for really the most vulnerable in the community. Uber doesn't come pick people up with a wheelchair lift. So and then in terms of climate action, I kind of question, this is a big gas guzzling van that's heading out to the airport. So I'm just not sure if it works in that regard. And I also hear Heather saying if this is going to be viable, there are going to need to be, I think you said, more partnerships with the private sector in some ways that have more fuel efficient vehicles and more flexibility in how they operate.
Thank you, Miles. Yeah, that actually fits really great into this next activity we will be doing. I think before just jumping into that, just want to make sure that there aren't any comments or questions.
Director Mayer.
Thank you, Chair. Just, you know, my concern is that we're dealing with such a small window for the pilot that we really don't have a full picture of what the Mountain Line Go could be. We're just working with in such a narrow couple of months that, you know, I mean, the trips could even fall off the edge of a cliff come June potentially, and then spike back up and fall. we don't really know how those costs are going to play out in a wider range of time. So I don't know if we have enough information to really make a good assessment right now as to the long-term viability and how it plays out financially.
Thank you. Gail, did you have your hand raised? Did you want to add something?
I want to agree with what Josh is saying. I actually just met with some developers last night from Phoenix or from Dallas who flew into the airport, and we are now officially into our busy time. And so I think running this pilot through the summer months until like November is going to give us better data to see whether or not people use that or not. The prices to fly in and out of Flagstaff increase dramatically over the summer months. So that could also have an impact on ridership as well. So I think I agree wholeheartedly with what Josh was saying, that we need more data.
Very good. Thank you. Stella.
Okay, back to me. Okay, so I think obviously now we just went through a lot of the intricacies of both pilots, but kind of as Miles alluded, we don't necessarily we never set goals for the airport pilot. It really was an idea came, we had funding, let's do it, which is, great to be able to move so fast and test it out. But I think now it's important that we do sort of take us back high level and think about just goals of serving the airport, not so much with microtransit, but there are other ways maybe we can serve the airport. Microtransit definitely being one of them, but there is also fixed route. So I'm going to run through these different potential goals, and then we will have a poll question that we can discuss. So next slide, please. And so one of the goals could be to fill in those early morning and late night trips. We've definitely heard from the community that, there's a lack of taxis, Ubers, and Lyfts during, kind of that 4:30 to 6:30, 7 o'clock hour, as well as going into the evening. So, there is a late night flight. There's no options when you arrive at like 10:30 to 11 p.m. And this goal would address, an existing gap. Next slide, please. Next, it would be an equity goal. So this goal would be that, everyone has an inexpensive option to get to the airport. But I think, again, as Miles said, it is, the airport may not be necessarily an equity destination, to have the ability to fly. But, I think that equity goal would be that there is at least a way to get to the airport. This is kind of competing against Ubers and Lyfts and taxis, because this would be sort of similar to how we're currently running the pilot, which would be sort of an all day of service. And this goal would just be able to increase the mobility options in our community. Next slide, please. Next is addressing parking challenges at the airports. We've definitely heard this before that, there is a lack of parking, and this would be able to provide a transportation option to the airport so people could leave their car at home. It might be less expensive than parking your car, once paid parking, is implemented. But I'm curious if this maybe now is becoming more of a historic reason. From my understanding, the airport is planning to expand parking and build a parking garage. I think with the implementation of paid parking, it will help manage the parking maybe a little bit better. So that this could potentially be a historic reason, but at least wanted to put it on here since this, this has been a reason for bringing transportation to the airport in the past. Next slide, please. Reputational. So, that Mountain Line should serve this area because it is a major destination. Could be an assumption that maybe the public would get familiar with using, public transit by taking it to the airport. Maybe then they, could use it in the future. Again, this is an assumption, but just that people do become maybe more familiar with our system. Next slide, please. And the last goal is climate action. So, is the purpose of providing transportation to the airport to address climate action goals? So this could be that there's opportunities to serve in the airport through other options. Again, I keep referencing you, Miles, but you mentioned that, microtransit, it is maybe more single trips. It could be that we are, again, becoming kind of Ubers and Lyfts. though our services, they do match riders to the best of their ability. So it could be that they pick up a group of people and bring everyone to the airport. But, you know, depending on when people are requesting rides, it could be that we are just doing a lot of single occupancy trips. Our vehicles are not the most fuel efficient. So that's just something to consider as well. And then next slide, this is, I think now we're ready for the poll. So the question is, and Rhonda, feel free to launch it, is, yeah, what is the top goal for serving Flagstaff Pulliam Airport with public transportation? And some of these kind of are all intertwined a bit, but really kind of following your gut of what do you think really the goal is for serving the airport? Okay, perfect. So you should see the poll up there, and we'll give maybe a minute or so. And let me know if someone does need any further clarification on the options, please let me know. All right, Rhonda, how are we doing?
It looks like 12 out of 25.
Sorry?
12, 14 now have completed. So I think there's 1 or 2 more maybe.
Okay, well, maybe do another 10 seconds or so. All right, we'll do 3, 2, 1. All right, we'll close it. And then Rhonda, if you can please share the results. I'm not
Drum
seeing
roll,
the results.
please.
Yeah, right.
Is it not in check? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No worries. Perfect. Thank you, Rhonda. Okay, excellent. So it looks like the top goal at 43% is fill in early morning, late night. Excellent. There's a tie for second place, which is address parking challenges and reputational, which those are both at 21%. And then at 14%, we have climate action. And then we have 0% for equity. So I just would love to hear some thoughts. Let's go with maybe the 14% for climate action. Would anyone want to share kind of why they chose that goal? And maybe only 1 or 2 of you. And there's no wrong answers. I'll point that out. It's just different perspectives, different ways that we would design the program in the future.
So Estella, I wanted to choose climate action. I'd like it to be about climate action, but to Miles's point earlier, we're not doing it the right way to attain climate action. So I think I would love it to be that there is either, you know, maybe it's a fixed route that fills in the early morning and the late night, but it's more of a group pickup and, you know, hits those prime targets when the flights are leaving. Because then if we're doing more people, maybe a more sustainable vehicle, they're not having to drive their personal vehicles. So I would like it to be climate action, if that helps.
It does, definitely. And I think that, I mean, the purpose of this question is to help with kind of future planning and how we would, you know, design this program in the future. So this is all very helpful. Let's go with sorry.
I was going to say, I didn't choose climate action, but I too also wanted to, because I do believe that this is what we're doing here is climate action. Although the ridership is not where we want it to be, it's so new. I definitely can imagine this transit being a very popular filled vehicle way that people travel to the airport, especially with the rising costs of gas and also parking. You know, the new parking we're putting in has a pay aspect, and Co-Chair Stom and Kinsey, to you all at NAU and Josh Mayer, you know, as you know, the cost goes up, people choose alternatives. And so I think that this is a real big one in checking the box on climate, but maybe it's just still too new at this point. I think I sparked a few other comments. Let's go, Director Mayor, do you want to jump in and then we'll go to Miles?
Sure. I know that Miles was first, but
oh, sorry about that.
All good. So I had two comments really, and I chose the fill-in of early morning and late night, and I also want to add to that. I think weather-related concerns. When the buses run when Ubers are not. Period. And so weather does become a concern for folks, and the buses still seem to get through. The second piece is sort of related to the climate action and how we can boost the numbers of riders, to bring the overall cost per rider down and overall impact down per user. And I was wondering if we considered in this pilot some sort of cost recovery model, a partnership with, if there's folks that are using the microtransit to get to and from hotels, and I know that the hotels don't run shuttles like they maybe ought to. I was wondering if maybe there was some consideration to partner with some of the hotels in town to provide trips to and from the airport.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. It's not something we've looked into yet, but I think those types of suggestions are really valuable of how we either sustain this moving forward or not. So appreciate that.
Okay, let's go to Miles.
Thank you. Estella, do you mind if I just kind of hit all of these at once? I know you were going one at a time, but
go for it.
Overlapping in my mind. Yeah, climate action, I definitely have concerns about calling it that. And if gas prices go up and people use this service more, well, we're still burning just as much gas, and they're not fuel efficient vehicles. And to me, when we then take that to reputational, that cuts both ways. And I would have a concern about the reputation becoming the taxpayers are subsidizing a 5-mile trip to the airport at $75 a trip. That's not the kind of reputation that we want, I don't think. And MetroPlan had in our recent strategic advance talked about, somebody said, understand market mechanisms better, how to use market forces to make these changes. And if you can stay with me on this one, in terms of parking challenges, I think that's important. And I know there's already moves to increase parking at the airport. That is a big environmental impact in a number of ways to make more land and asphalt to increase parking. And in transit, there's something, we talk about incentives and disincentives. And there's an incentive that it's $1 to have a van take you to the airport. It's also, that's an incentive to use the bus. It's a disincentive to drive if parking costs a lot at the airport. So I know that the city is looking at charging for parking, and I think that's really important, because if parking pays its own costs or more of them, and it costs a lot for people to park there, well, then they're going to find other rides. And then maybe the public sector or private sector can come in with more fuel efficient vehicles and just drop people off. Maybe at some point Mountain Line can do it. But I know I'm rambling a bit here, but right now it's like all the pieces aren't really meshing up to me to really meet very many of the goals that are lined out here. Thank you.
Thank
you. Chair Stam and then Kinsey.
I am so sorry, Adam. That was my hand up from the last time.
Okay, I had a feeling, no worries. Kinsey, welcome. What are your thoughts?
I could find the unmute button. Thank you for having me today. I really quick was just my personal vote was to fill in early morning and late night, just because I know for students, Like I know my roommate sometimes goes to that early flight and none of us want to wake up. And so it'd be very nice if someone else could take them. But I also think parking is a big thing too. Like I recently just went to Texas and was very nervous to leave my car just because like parking rules are really ambiguous. So like someone who's a little bit more worried about that towing fee for students, I think both of those are really big issues that I think are very marketable on campus. And I mean, student government can very easily market. I just had a really quick question. It's a little different than the airport thing, but do we have something that like I could call instead of an Uber downtown like Fridays and Saturdays, like late evenings, bar kind of is what I'm thinking. I don't know if that's already in place though.
Yeah, I can answer that. Right now, I mean, it would just be our regular fixed route buses, but there's not like an Uber type replacement. Right now, the microtransit pilots, they're not filling in that late night gap.
How late do they run?
Monday through Friday is around 10:30. Each route's a little different, but then Saturday and Sunday it's about 8:30.
Okay. Yeah, just an idea. But thank you.
And there has been, on that same topic, I know this is off topic, but I know there has been that shuttle from campus to downtown that I've taken in the past when I was a student. But I think that's definitely a different topic, right, Estella?
Yeah, I prefer if we can focus on the airport, but definitely this feedback's helpful. I know Flagstaff in Motion will be looking at late night service and things, so it's definitely all good input.
And to Kinsey's point, I think a lot more marketing can be done among students for this pilot or for this service to the airport. And I just had a quick question on what Miles had mentioned. If this paratransit vehicle was full, and let's say how many people can fit on the van?
It can fit 14. Yes.
Okay, so I'm curious if what Miles said was accurate in regards to the gas comparison for climate. 14 vehicles drove out. Would that utilize more gas than one of these vehicles? I know that's ambitious to say that it'll be full, but I'm just wondering if we did reach the promised land and filled it up and made it popular, because in Israel, where I'm from, these programs are very successful and they basically wait till they fill up to capacity to utilize the service. So I am hoping we're working towards that. And I'm wondering if they did fill up 80-90%, Miles, if that would make it more climate efficient and a better option in regards to reaching neutrality. Estella, did you have any thoughts about that? And I see Miles has joined us as well.
It's definitely something we can kind of do some analysis on how many people we would need to use less gas than a single occupant vehicle. And I mean, in general, Mountain Line is looking for electric vehicles, definitely on our fixed route side. And I know as newer models and the technology gets better, it could be a feasible option for a paratransit. But obviously, it's much down the road, but it is something, we are definitely striving towards.
Thank you for that. Miles, what are your thoughts?
I would have to agree. If the vehicles were full, that would make a big difference on efficiency. And maybe an interesting question would be, what would the breaking point be in terms of how full they would have to be to make it be a green solution? And then is that reasonable in this land use pattern that we've got and the way people travel? Is it reasonable that we can reach those goals? We're just going for, even if it's a challenge, that's fine too.
The way they currently travel, that's all changing. But yeah, I appreciate that comment, Miles. Thank you. Estella, should we keep trying to fish for comments, or go ahead?
I think we are pretty much at time, but would love to just maybe 5 minutes or so more, if that's allowed. And Rhonda and Heather, feel free to cut me off if I'm over my time. Just curious. I know there's been a few comments on, sustaining the pilot. I know we've only had 2 months up to date, currently in our 3rd month. But just a direction for staff on next steps. Is this something that we need to strive towards to at least do the pilot till November that was mentioned, or really try and seek partnerships with the city or hotels in order to sustain this? Just would love to hear maybe some high level thoughts on kind of next steps with this pilot. And just a reminder, these funds do expire at the end of June. That's how we've marketed and advertised this pilot, that it's going through the end of June. So we really would need, kind of some additional funds and marketing or to sustain it much longer.
Members, what are your thoughts, TAC and board? I'll just say while I have the mic, I like to see this at least for a year to get some real data and let this really build, and not just like the soft release that we did and telling people, hey, it's only till June. Like all that basically, I think, tells people don't utilize this. It's not like a, strong effort here. It's just a pilot, but I think if we did it for a year, we can really focus on the partnership, we can focus on the marketing, and we can really get some true data that can really help us analyze whether or not this is worthwhile. But in the end, I'd say, my approach personally is that we make it work and that we find a way to make this work, because there are people driving to the airport. And to your point, Estella, we have, tourists utilizing this. And too often do I hear tourists drive. Well, here's an opportunity for them to culture shift. And we can, be that reputational, leader in that culture shift, in that climate action. That's my little spiel. Who else has a thought? Jump in. Okay, so we're doing it for a year. We're good.
Yeah, and I did hear
Yes.
from Gail Jackson to run through November to kind of get through our busy seasons. That's also been discussed. So I think we can take all these input and kind of come back and discuss with staff and see also from a budget perspective, what it could look like. So.
Director Williams.
Yes, Chairman Shimoni, I was just going to echo what you shared. I think trying to get a year's worth of data and usership would be important. But I also think, looking at the goals on that survey that we just went through, I selected to fill in early morning, late night, because I feel that that's a goal that we could fill avoiding. Some of those other goals are perhaps things that Mountain Lion is not able to actually fulfill. And we have a measurable outcome that makes sense. And so I think moving forward, to me, it makes sense to pay closer attention to the fill-in early mornings, late night service as maybe a focal point, considering the fact that we would be in the future considering more of a, if I recall, a bus route connecting the hospital and the airport, like what can be done in the interim. And so I think the gap in the early mornings and the late night is a place where we could actually contribute to making things better.
Thank you. Let's go to Heather, and then we'll go to Director Sweet.
I'm happy to defer to Director Sweet first.
Director Sweet.
Thank you. I just think we have not had enough time to collect the proper data, and I would like to see this continue. There's so many outcomes that can come from this, and I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't try and continue to see what those services can end up looking like. Thank you.
Heather, jump in.
Yeah, so I just want to kind of summarize what I think I'm hearing as direction, because we do kind of, sorry, Estella, need to close this one out and move forward. There is a desire to continue this service, and we understand that desire. I agree with many of the sentiments. We don't have enough data to really determine whether the pilot is a good evidence of a need for service or not yet. I appreciate the feedback on it is $77 per trip, and an Uber might cost a lot less than that. So I think we need to go to our drawing board a bit, and we need to explore how we explore those partnerships so that we're, finding more cost-effective ways of doing it. We need to explore what our own fleet looks like and whether there are right sizing to the fleet to be done. And I think we need to right size the fare. And I know, Estella, that was the next place you were going with some of this. And maybe if you don't mind, we may skip that portion. Because I think really we need to come back in June. And we need to be able to say to the board, and my concern is that we're right up against June 30th. But to really say to the board, okay, you want us to continue it, here's what it's going to cost, here's the ways that we can model that service, and here's the fare change that we would need to make to really right size the fare. I don't have another language for that right at the moment. And so that the board can make a decision. I will just remind everyone that is participating today that microtransit was piloted under our federal grant. It is not in our budgeted programs to provide. We are working very hard to find ways to continue the Huntington corridor area. We've applied for the ARPA grant. We believe there's some cost efficiency in commingling that will allow us to continue that. The airport is very different because it expands our service hours. It changes what we do. So it's not just using what we already have differently, it's really changing what we do. So we'll need to talk about if this is off budget, what is that off budget expense going to be? And really, where's the money going to come from to pay for it? And unfortunately, I really think because of the timing of the pilot program, for a whole lot of reasons, we didn't get back to city to consider it in their budget either. And so at this point, for us to approach the airport and say, well, if you want us to continue this, it's going to be, I'll just use Stella's number, $538,000. I'm sure they're going to say the same thing I'm saying. It's not in our budget. That doesn't mean we don't want to continue. It just means we have to come up with some strategies on how to continue. So I really think that's probably the next step in this conversation, and probably a great discussion for us in June, at least to try and get us expanded to November, as has been suggested several times today. But maybe Director Shimoni, to your point of really finding that way to get to a full year so that we have the data to build upon. And I know Director Mayer shared the same thoughts.
Thank you, Heather. Estella, is there more you'd like to talk about?
No, thank you everyone for your input, and thank you, Heather, for summarizing all the thoughts. I believe this is my last slide, so we can move on.
Very good. Well, thank you for that. I think this is a good time to take a little break. Heather, are we still good for 10 minutes?
Yes, that would be great. Everybody take 10 and come back and we'll finish up our other discussions.
We'll get going at 44 after. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Shimoni. Chair Shimoni, we do have a phone number that's on, but we need to try to find out who that is.
Okay.
It's
There's a-
928-220-5036 if they could identify themselves.
Identify yourselves.
5936, sorry.
If that is you calling in with that number, please do unmute yourself and let us know who you are.
Might need to ask the same question after break. People.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
then we probably won't have.
Welcome back, everybody. Rhonda, are we ready to move on?
Yes, we are.
Wonderful. I just want to thank everybody for the quality discussion we've had so far. I think we've gotten into some good topics and had some really nice, lively discussion. So just thank you to all the TAC members and board members and staff that have been a part of this discussion. It's been really fruitful. So we are down to, Heather, were we skipping this next one? Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm going to propose that we table the zero emission transition update in light of time and really the great engagement we're getting. We appreciate. And so we'll put that on a future agenda. It's not urgent.
Very good. So let's jump down to agenda item 8, which is our future ridership with Jackie Lenners.
I can go by Jenny today. That's fine. All right. Hi. Good morning, members of the TAC and board. Thank you. So this is a conversation about future ridership, and really right now it's about ridership recovery. I think that's a big task that goes far beyond marketing, but I'm going to kind of hone in on some of the marketing things today. And a lot of it really does have to do with a lot of the discussions we've already had. The Flagstaff in Motion plan, certainly looking at ways to grow ridership, microtransit being one solution to perhaps grow ridership. So I think there's a lot of things from a service standpoint, but today we'll kind of focus on marketing. Next slide, please. So just wanted to kind of set the stage for where we are with ridership, and looking at, how obviously COVID has very much impacted our industry and ridership. And so, in general, we are down about 45% from pre-COVID times. We are obviously recovering, as you can see month to month. In March, we had about a 63% increase between fiscal year 21 and 22. So things are certainly coming back, but not back yet to the level that they were, that things were pre-COVID. And some things have obviously changed with COVID. A lot has changed in our world, some things for the better. We have more people working from home, not great news for transit, but great news for the environment, fewer people commuting. And then some things, especially in Flagstaff, that I think are maybe not for the better. For instance, more parents, I think, are driving their kids to school individually. I think there were earlier on, I think some, COVID fears of putting children on a school bus together. And also FUSD is facing the very same staffing shortages that we are. And my understanding is that the school bus situation has not been the most convenient this school year. I think there's a lot of, children having to leave much earlier than they normally would. So it's just easier to hop in a parent's car. So I think these are some of the things that have really changed our travel patterns during COVID, and Mountain Line has changed as well. I mentioned the staffing shortage. As you all know, we are currently operating on a reduced schedule on Route 4. We quite frankly haven't had a full pre-COVID schedule since the pandemic hit. Route 10 has been operating at a lower level. So we're really, things have all around changed, and that is obviously impacting ridership and impacting our ability to recover. Next slide, please. This is my Debbie Downer doom and gloom slide that is really showing the just how dire things are with the transit industry. Now, Mountain Line has generally shown, as a smaller agency, an ability to recover faster than the San Francisco's, New York's, Los Angeles's of the world. But obviously, public transit was deeply impacted by COVID and continues to be in it. And some are saying that it's going to take a decade for things to really fully recover. So I'll move on from my Debbie Downer slide and try to be more positive now. Next slide, please. So just want to dive a little bit deeper into some of the ridership. Route 10 is really dragging down the ridership. So as I mentioned before, we're operating at about 45% down when you look at ridership as a whole across the system. When you just pull out Route 10, you can see that number, those decreases are significantly higher. And so, I think that it's just not recovering at the same rate. Obviously, student NAU is back in school, but I think that there are some more online options for people that maybe didn't previously exist. And travel patterns have really changed. If you can go to the next slide, we'll examine that a little bit more. So this is Route 10. It launched in 2012, so 10 years ago, as our first bus rapid transit system. It really aimed to connect NAU campus with the Woodlands Village area, which at the time was the predominant off-campus student housing area, and downtown Flagstaff. At that time, most students who lived off campus lived in those apartments in the Woodlands Village area. And this route really connected them to campus and connected them to downtown. It did exactly as it was supposed to do. Fast forward to where we are today, and off-campus student housing is far more dispersed. You have things like the Standard that is opened on West Route 66. You have the Fremont Station, which is close to Route 10, but not quite there. You have the Uncommon on Milton. And then the Jack, formerly the Hub downtown, and then Alara, which will be opening over in the Butler area by Sawmill. So the point is that we don't know that the current Route 10 is really serving off-campus students living off campus in the best possible way anymore. Maybe we aren't getting to the bulk of the students who are living off campus. If more students are choosing, and my understanding is that they are quite full, choosing these off-campus student geared, they're obviously anybody can live there, but we know they're geared for students. You can sign these individual leases. If we know that a lot of them are choosing to live there because of the flexibility they offer over a traditional apartment, which is what you will mostly find in the Woodlands Village area, perhaps that's impacting ridership on Route 10 and why it's not recovering as quickly, because we're not serving as many of those off-campus students. Next slide, please. So restoring marketing. I want to talk a little bit about some kind of general marketing that we are starting to do to try and restore ridership, welcome riders back, but also take advantage of high gas prices. I'm just going to kind of do a high level overview here. I'm not going to get into every tactic that we're using. Rest assured that we are using a wide variety of tactics, from traditional print to online to videos to social media, everything in between, Spotify, things along those lines. So I don't want to necessarily get into a deep discussion about tactics, but keep it a little bit higher level. So really, we haven't done a lot of proactive marketing during COVID-19. We didn't want people jamming on buses who weren't providing an essential function. We were really focused on those essential trips. And then with a lot of the masking requirements and the recommendations for social distancing and things along those lines, it didn't feel right to be out there saying, "Yay, come ride the bus." So we kept a pretty low profile, and we feel like it's time. We're ready to be back out there. It's obviously not ideal. We just announced that we're cutting service, and now we're out here, but it's we really haven't had a lot of negative public feedback related to that. So we felt like it was a good time. So we kind of have this dual messaging about welcome back, like we're here. Your bus is waiting, but also high gas prices. Obviously, I don't need to tell any of you what gas costs right now. So trying to really play on that messaging as well. Next slide, please. And then some other new things that we are looking at doing that kind of really fall under this umbrella of welcome back. Mountain Line Mondays. So in June and July, Mountain Line will be free every Monday. We really like alliteration, so we chose Mondays. And so you'll see some marketing coming out from us related to that. And then you have all these fare-related items that we rolled out during COVID because we were already planning to do it, but didn't do a big push for them. And they are items that we think will make riding transit easier. So the mobile ticketing, which we've seen a pretty good adoption of it with doing very little proactive marketing around it. Stored value cards, which are the kind of like that Starbucks card where you can load $10, $20 at a time if you don't ride very often, you work it down and then you can reload more as you need it. And then fare capping, which is the premise of, you don't need to come in and buy a 30-day pass if you don't have the $34 on hand. If you ride enough over a period of time that equals that value of the 30-day pass, you'll be given that 30-day pass through the online systems. And a lot of these really have to also play into our back to school. So we will be making a big, once again, a big splash with back to school, really trying to hit the charter and district schools, knowing the situation I already described with the FUSD bus situation, really trying to help be part of that solution. And I think some of these things, especially the store value card, could be a huge incentive for parents. You can give your kid this card, and if they don't ride very often, but they just might need it on occasion, and you can reload it as they need it. So that's kind of some things that we have coming up. And then next slide, please. So kind of looking down the road, and this really does tie in a lot, I think, with what we kind of already talked about in Busy's presentation earlier. We actually did a Never Rider survey in 2019, so it's pre-COVID. And I'm just going to share a couple pieces of information from it that I think is still relevant today about why people said they don't ride mountain line. As you can see, a solid nearly 50% prefer to drive their own vehicle, just a solid preference for their car. And another 33%, obviously you can select more than one thing in this survey, believe they need their car during the day. And then that's followed by some things that are really service related. So the bus doesn't come often enough, there's not a stop close to my house, doesn't run late enough in the evening. So some more service related things that kind of follow that. So, I kind of want to stop here. One of the, looking at future ridership, one of the things we need to think about is, why this group here doesn't ride. This is not an accusation. This is not I'm not asking anybody to out themselves, but I don't believe that a lot of people in this group are riding regularly, and myself included. And my reasons, my personal reasons are that I have an 11-year-old daughter who has gymnastics almost every day after school, and I need to be able to get her there, and a husband that travels. So that's my personal reason, and I ride when I can. So this is certainly not a accusation. It's more just a conversation. I'd love to hear some of your reasons about you all have access to free transit, I believe, through being on our board in TAC. So it's certainly not the cost. So what are your reasons that you don't ride?
Jackie, I'll say it's excuses, not reasons. Because if you didn't have a choice and it wasn't as comfortable, you would be forced to, and you would do it, and you'd find a way to make it work. But thanks for the presentation, and Chair Sam, start us off.
I live in Kachina.
Okay, Aaron is
and there are, and I'm I know when people say, why can't they offer to Kachina? I do share that it really, right now, if we want to get a bigger bang for our buck, as we've talked about, going to all the outlier areas is not necessarily the best option. You can say, and we don't, so I live in Kachina, and honestly, I go to work, I go home. I don't really, it was interesting. We were at the Transportative Transportation, and they gave this example of, somebody goes to work, and then you go to the gas station, you go to the coffee shop, and then you go to the store, and then you go to all these places. And I thought, how inefficient, I try to drive as little as possible. So I make sure that, I don't go to the store every day. I don't go to the coffee shop, and anywhere I go, I try to make sure it's between these 2 points. But when we were in town, we lived right along the Route 10, and the kids and my husband would take it to the movies all the time when Harkins was on that Route 10. So when it was there, we used it, but it's not an option in Kachina, and yeah.
And that brings up a good point. And I think it's one I had actually a conversation with interim Deputy City Manager Heidi Hansen about this, who also does not live in the service area, about, and she's one who has meetings a lot, and Aaron, you mentioned you really just stay on campus, but a lot of people maybe who commute in, but then they're driving to NAU for a meeting. Pre-COVID, we're not doing it as much anymore, but it's coming back, and so like, is there, even if you have to bring your car in, is there a way to then not touch it during the day and use transit during the day? So I think that's a definite target or potential for us. Adam, I'll turn it back over to you.
Let's go to Director Mayor, then Sweet, then Tiffany.
Thank you, Chair. I'll out myself too. I'm a never writer, and the reason is my excuse, if I can use the chair's term, is that I live in Ponderosa Trails, fairly deep into the neighborhood there, and once I get, it's 2.2 miles door to door. So once I get to a stop, I'm already over halfway there. And then I just might as well just go to work rather than hop on the bus. So that's where I am.
Thank you. That's a great point about the, not level of service, but the areas we serve. And, obviously Busy talked about that earlier with the 5-year plan and how to cover those gaps. Thank you.
Director Sweet.
Thank you. I do not use the bus, but my 2 boys do. They use it quite often, actually, and it's come in super handy with our family. For me personally, I happen to live and work. I have 2 jobs, I guess, close, and so I use my electric bike as much as I can. And when I do grocery shopping, I do drive. But my family is lucky. We live close to where we need to be, and the boys have really utilized the transit and love it. So there you go.
Thank you, Director. Tiffany, welcome. What's your excuse?
Mine. So I use I do prefer to use my own vehicle, but 2, with work, specifically Monday through Friday, I am out in the community, kind of driving back and forth from organization to organization in the role that I have. And then I do live in Presidio in the Pines, so that is also far out from the service area currently that is provided.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for those responses. I don't see any other hands up. Do you, Chair Shimoni?
I don't, and I'll just say, I've taken the bus a handful of times, but I definitely try to ride everywhere I can, east to west, north to south, but I do drive from time to time as well. I just think it's interesting, often I hear folks say, I need my car. And it's just interesting that 48% on this report say that they just prefer their own vehicle. And I think it is a comfort thing and a convenience thing. And I think we make excuses for those comforts. And it's a real privilege that we have. But yeah, I'll let you continue the dialogue before I start rambling too much.
Thanks. I know I appreciate all that feedback. It's I think we all have our own reasons, excuses, whatever they might be. And I think it's part of the future ridership is, transit doesn't have to be an all or nothing. You don't have to ride 100% of the time. So how do we get people to think about just switching some trips, and whether it's to transit, biking, walking, whatever it might be? Could there be an opportunity to get people to just switch a portion of them? So I think that's kind of something we can look at. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So from that same 2019 Never Rider survey, we asked what could motivate you to ride Mountain Line. And it's funny, so while some of those service related things were a little bit lower in the reasons you don't ride, they're higher in the motivation, what could motivate you to ride. So as board member Mayor, sorry, I'm losing my verbiage here, pointed out, a bus stop closer to my home or destination. Certainly I fall in the same category there, the more frequent buses, things along those lines. You see 16, almost 17%, a significant increase in the price of gasoline. We're trying to take advantage of that right now, pointing out the cost of our passes have not increased, they're the same. And then the next one I find interesting, that right after that, 13.5% if my employer paid for all or part of my fare. So I think that's a good discussion point that leads into my next slide, Rhonda, if you want to go to the next one. All right, so this is EcoPass. EcoPass is our employer and now residential bulk pass program. So where an employer purchases an eco pass, which is a year-long pass for all employees at a heavily discounted rate, regardless of whether every employee uses the bus or not. The idea is that you have an economy of scale where you have enough riders that it makes sense that even if you're buying them for all of them and you only have this percentage using it, it's still cheaper than buying an annual pass, which is about, we don't sell an annual pass, but 12, 30-day pass is a little over $400 than just buying those for the people that ride. So I put on here that our fiscal year 2018 ridership data. So going back to pre-COVID, our last full pre-COVID glimpse at things. And then, so, basically the trying to show that with these 3 employers who are on our board, plus the other 2 that participate, which is the hospital and Park Flag, we have over 5,000 employees in this town that have the ability to ride transit for free every single day. To work for fun, doesn't just have to be for work. And you can see, obviously there is a huge correlation between decoupling parking from your employment. If obviously we know that NAU is the only employer on this list that employees have to purchase a parking pass. It is not covered for them. And the ridership correlates, the usage definitely correlates to that. So you can see that the bottom of everyone is the number of unique passes used. So for instance, in the month of October, back in fiscal year 2018, 502 different people used an NAU Eco Pass, totaling over 8,000 trips. So NAU gets a huge bang for their buck as far as the Eco Pass program goes. When you look at the city and county, which offer ample free parking to their employees, there is a definite correlation in the reduced usage of this. So, both the city and the county are, quite frankly, not breaking even, don't have enough unique monthly users. And we try and work with these organizations. We are more than willing to be out there doing demonstrations, being at events, getting information. It is certainly a challenge. And I think it's definitely one of those kind of huge areas of opportunity for us. So that's kind of one of the other things I wanted to toss out here. How can we be leaders in our organizations to increase these numbers? How can we, these programs have been going on for quite some time. Obviously, I think the city stopped for a little bit during after 2008 for budgetary reasons, but we're so happy to have them back in the program, and we want it to be successful. So are there thoughts on ways that we can be leaders within these organizations to model and to try and get more of these employees to switch some of their trips to transit?
Who has the answers? Jump in. Director Mayer.
To the chair, I was just wondering if you had any thoughts as to how well charging employees for parking would sit with the folks at the city.
Very well. I say let's do it. $400 a semester.
I'm joking, but I think a lot of it, and I can't speak to what's going on at the county or the city, but I think I know that at the university anyway, and I think that we could probably do an even better job of marketing it. I know that people sort of have this understanding that it's a benefit that's available to them, but it's even at these numbers, I think it's way underutilized.
Thank you, Director Mayer, for that recognition. I really appreciate that. So I think it is a challenge for us in any of these organizations that are quite large. We don't have the as far as getting to the employees that the employers have. We don't have a list of we don't have a list of the employees' email addresses and can really do things like that. So I think that is a huge part of it. And like I said, we stand by, we can provide whatever you need, and to try and, we want to see these numbers huge, because I think that, 5,000 employees in this town who have free transit is not an insignificant number who have access to free transit.
I fully agree. Jackie, are we marketing at these different facilities? I'm assuming there's posters up and promotional things up in like employee lobbies and such.
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think Aaron has an answer for NAU.
Let me jump in. So it is part of every new employee orientation. It's on our website. It's listed on the HR website, and we do at least twice a year. We put it out in the NAU Review, which is a newsletter that goes to all employees. Whenever we have an opportunity to present or interact with a department, we include it in there. So we do push it out. So I will let you know, there was a decrease. I think the remote work is going to have a bigger impact than anything else these days, because we're seeing just less employees coming to campus, period. The permit sale, and I think this is a great thing. I know if one of the silver linings of COVID is that I think there was a real concern on, at least in my experience on the university, about doing remote work for people, with people being productive. But I think COVID showed them there is possibility for that to work, and it helps the environment because there's a good decrease in the number of employees that were getting parking permits too. So that's fantastic. I do want to say I am very sensitive when people talk about using the price of parking as a deterrent, because we have people that do not have access to, a lot of people that live outside of Flagstaff, they do that because it's less expensive, because they make less money, and to jack up the cost of a permit on them as a deterrent would really not sit well with me. But I can absolutely look, I don't have like a marketing person, but I work with university marketing. I can absolutely ask them if there's more ideas. I think in the past years, we've done things at the bus shelters. So we've done different things, but we can always look, there's always room to do more, or there's always, possibility to do more. So.
Thanks, Erin. I appreciate that. And I think, NAU is one where we're fortunate that we actually have an app through the NAU app. So Kate actually messaged me on the side, like, can we just give it to everybody at NAU? And they as opposed to opting in, they have to opt out of it.
No, they get it. I have on my phone, all I have to do is go to the NAU Go app. It knows that I'm a faculty member or faculty and staff, and I click on the EcoPass. It's that, so they already have it really in their hand. Some people are still old school and like a card, so we're not going to get rid of the cards.
Yes, totally appreciate that. So thank you. I want to keep the discussion going, just keep my presentation going just for the sake of time. But I think just planting that seed with some of the other organizations about how we can be role models for employees. I know in our own organization, Heather has been really writing and posting it on social media. And I think that's a huge thing for people to see and to role model the actions that we want employees to take. So I am going to, so the next slide before you go to it, Rhonda, because it's a video, it'll hopefully play. So I want to show a super quick video that Park Flag, we did with Park Flag. It might start playing, so I'll shut up if it's going to. So most recently, Park Flag did a, we had a change in the way we do things, and you can buy a downtown employee parking permit and you can get a free EcoPass. You don't have to choose. You don't have to say I'm only doing one thing. So we did, it hasn't actually been put out yet, but we actually just finished it. This little video to explain it. So I'll let Rhonda play that. Thank you.
I'm Corey Custer. I'm one of the managers here at Brightside Bookshop, and I'm here to tell you about the exciting choice you have as a downtown employee to get both a bus pass and a parking pass. I love it because I have one car in my family, and so I can have the choice of either driving downtown or riding the bus, or sometimes I bike and I don't want to ride my bike home at the end of the day, so I'll throw my bike on the bus. So I love having all these choices of transportation around Flagstaff.
Thanks, Rhonda, for playing that. So yeah, I think it's just like trying to get to those downtown employees, but we really appreciate the flexibility of Park Flag in making this decision to change up the way they do the program. So that kind of leads into my next and final slide, or we can watch the video again. All right, so just some ideas on future ridership that I think, that employer flexibility. We just talked a little bit about it with Park Flag, but like one thing that we're going to do when we move to the new Downtown Connection Center, where we will have limited parking and would really prefer employees to take advantage of their benefit of free transit, is allowing employees to count their transit commute as part of their workday. So that's one big thing is, bus schedules don't always super conveniently line up with the start and end of a workday. So if we all have these things that we work off of all the time, so you can count your commute as part of your workday, which people find as a huge benefit. Looking at some enhanced pass programs. What are some other things that we can do to get more passes out to more people so more people have access to free transit? And then that school transportation. So I know we've been having some conversations with FUSD about what a bigger role that we could play. So I know we are coming up on some time here. So I think that is my last slide. I'm happy to answer any questions if there's anything else, or turn it over to our next presenter, which I think is Kate.
Jackie, thank you. I just took a couple quick notes I wanted to add. Communication I think is key. So I'm glad to hear what Aaron's doing with NAU. I think that's really important. I like the idea of identifying ambassadors at each of the agencies and really creating like a marketing campaign at each agency and doing little videos like that. I think really go a long way. And just to educate, empower, and promote this new style of travel. I think a lot of times people feel intimidated. They don't know how to identify the bus, which bus, what app to download. And so we just need to really like spoon feed it to people through ambassadors. But we can talk more about that later. And I just wanted to throw that in there. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Any other last minute comments? Okay, not hearing any. I'm going to say let's move on to the next agenda item, which is our transit policies with our Deputy General Manager, Kate Morley.
Hi, thank you, Chair, members of the board, and TAC. We wanted to take some time to talk about transit policies at our partner organizations, not just our own policies, and how we may be able to advance the things that Mountain Line does by looking at the policies outside of Mountain Line's control, I guess. So on the slide in front of you, you can see some random samples of the many plans that include policies for our partner organizations out there, and they are just a sample of them. Next slide, Rhonda. So all the member organizations of Mountain Line have decided to join intentionally, right? And that's because they see a value to their organization of having transit involved. And so I want to start by breaking into our member organizations. And if you're not a part of a member organization, you'll be assigned. So we're going to do some breakout rooms here. And in the breakout rooms, I want us to take 4 minutes to discuss what is it that you want Mountain Line to bring your organization? Why have you decided that transit is important? And how can we advance the things that you're trying to do at your own organization? And then we're going to come back and we're going to report out and briefly, like a minute, report out from each organization. And I'd love a member of that organization to actually do the reporting out. So with that, IT should have us ready here to break into groups. And we're looking forward to hearing back from you in about 4 minutes or so. And hit join and it'll bring you back automatically if you're not familiar with this.
can we support the county's transportation goals and plans as a transit agency? What else could we be doing differently? I'll just toss out, because we just talked with Jackie about eco-prices. Maybe it's helping your employees as part of those goals and objectives, but broadly, I would really appreciate your thoughts and feedback on what we could be doing to help your agency achieve those goals.
Hi, welcome back, everyone. I hope that you guys had some good dialogues in there about why your organization is interested in transit and how transit can help you achieve your goals. We're going to do very quick report outs here. It doesn't even have to be a minute. It could be a couple sentences. And I'm going to start with, let's see, I'll start with City of Fleck.
Vice Mayor, take it away.
It was a great, quick conversation. The overreaching goal for us would be the climate emergency that our city has declared. And that brings in so much. It brings taking cars off the road, addressing future projects, housing, resiliency. We want to make sure that we're leading by example. That was one thing that Councilmember Shimoni brought up. Who are we frequently servicing? Just making sure that we're, reaching out to all different sectors of Flagstaff, making sure that we can have the transit easy so that we can keep working towards getting the cars off the road, and just linking sustainability with all things that Mountain Line does. And our last topic that we talked about quickly was our student population, and we were laughing that FALA, everyone from FALA takes the bus, but all other schools aren't really on board quite yet. And how do we reach out to that? So it was a good conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much. Let's go CCC.
Hello, everybody. We talked about the importance of keeping the routes and timing of the routes to the Lone Tree campus. That would be good. It provides our students with options to ride the bus and still able to make it to their scheduled classes. We talked about a little bit about continuing the dialogues already that are in place between NAU, Mountain Line, and CCC regarding CDL training facility and the importance that we all have in trying to provide the community with CDL trained drivers. The bus program is something that's been important for CCC for several years, and that is an item of continued need, as well as furthering conversations about how to sustain that long term. And then towards the end, talked a little bit more about like the unique relationship between CCC and NAU. And we do have quite a few students who spend time over on NAU's campus. The Klein Library in particular is a primary resource for the CCC students. And he even thought of potentially if there was a way to create a mini route that gets students from, the bus stop on Lone Tree to a good spot on NAU's campus and back and forth. Because some of our students would probably ride that as opposed to driving over to the NAU campus and not be guaranteed any sort of good parking or not be able to afford parking. So that was just a creative idea that came out of our discussions this morning.
Well, that sounds great and like some really good ideas. So since you mentioned NAU, we'll put them in the hot seat.
Hi, good morning. So we had just talked about, to the point that was made earlier, the way a lot of the apartments where our students live has kind of shifted. Finding a way that routes could get to, or at least closer to the campus in a timely manner, it has to be, to our point earlier, has to be more convenient than driving. If it's going to take them 2 transfers and 45 minutes to get to campus, that is not as attractive as the current Route 10 and what the success that we have seen through that program, where you could get to campus within 10 minutes and dropped off almost right in front of your building, in many cases. But we also talked about for some of our employees that would, have expressed an interest. It's just that they work prior to the route starting. And those are some of our lower paid employees. And so looking at the timing of the service, Kinsey had shared, there's students who would probably ride, but they work past 10 o'clock at night, closing the dining halls as an example, or some of the student spaces around campus. And so the timing of the service, as well as the so timing start and finish, and then timing in terms of travel time, those are the things that if there were ways to improve those, we strongly believe that there'd be an increase in use of transit, and that would help us get to our climate goals as well. And I am going to look to have a video made. I kind of liked the video. I will ask marketing if they could make me a video, and we can put it all over the university.
I like it a lot. And then Coconino County.
Sure, I'll go. We did talk mostly about how we could expand our reach as far as public transportation into the outer areas, because we do have many employees that work outside of Flagstaff that commute in. So we had really spent most of our time talking about that and the different things that we've discussed over the last couple of months in regards to transit and funding and how do we expand that reach? How do we connect with people, not just employees of Coconino County, but the community members that we serve, and surveying what their thoughts are around public transit and their needs. That's really what we talked about. Thank you.
Great. Well, those all are great ideas. I'm going to take a couple minutes now real quick to go through some of those. Are all things that we should be working on and want to do. I'm going to take a couple minutes to walk through other things on our strategic plan list that are related to partners, and then some challenges that we have in implementing them. And then we'll talk a little bit about what may need to change or what policies we may need in order to further get some of these things done. So I pulled some items from this, or sorry, next slide, Rhonda. I'm not in control. I'm like, oh yeah, click the next slide. Thank you. So I pulled some items from the strategic plan that really we need partners to help us to be able to implement. And a lot of them relate to capital projects. So it's about bus stop spacing. It's about how our transit projects incorporated into 419 funded transportation improvements. It's about how do we make sure that our entire network is multimodal. So a lot of capital things are actually what come up in the strategic plan when we look at partnerships with our member organizations. Next slide. And while we have all these goals in the strategic plan, we definitely experience challenges in trying to implement some of our capital projects. So the top item there is US 89, the section owned by the city of Flagstaff, where we've gotten a lot of public comment about needing better access to that facility. The bus stop is just across the street, but there's no safe pedestrian crossing. We run into challenges with when we talk about trying to get a stoplight or some pedestrian beacon installed there. Phoenix Avenue, we've been attempting to get the signal in at Phoenix Avenue. It has been denied by the North Central District, despite that it's in current planning documents. The Milton Corridor Plan recommends it. We want to pay for it. We still can't get it done because it falls back to some of these technical processes in the engineering division. And then there's also things like we want the stop at Tacos Los Altos, just down the road from headquarters here, to be improved. It's a very popular stop, the closest one to the shelter actually. And it's just a sign stop. There's nothing there. We run into challenges in terms of acquiring right-of-way, but also parking rules, right? So to put a stop in, we'd have to take out parking spaces from this business. And there's challenges over whether that's even allowed, outside of whether or not the owner wanted to do it. Next slide. And then we do have some challenges with services, right? So I think it was Member Kerr previously talked about, she lives in Presidio and there's no service out there. The Route 8 extension, you can see existing Route 8 in blue there. The Route 8 extension is supposed to come out into Woody Mountain Road, which is just on the right side of the big vacant parcel that's kind of red and dirt in there. That's all being developed into housing at this point, and we don't have a way to serve that with a funding mechanism, right? So how are we able to get that done? If you remember, we made an ask of the city council to ask the developer to help pitch in for that route extension. We ran into some questions about the city's ability to ask for something on behalf of Mountain Line. And now those same kind of challenges may come up with the potential relocation of NAH and asks around extending transit service to ensure that the hospital has service, bus service, obviously. Next slide. And so, I think we have a lot to achieve. You guys all talked about new things on the list. We've got existing things on the list. So I want to talk a little bit about what policies are out there. Are we running into a policy challenge in being able to implement some of these things? And, I highlighted some things that you guys have already talked about for each of the partner organizations on here. I think we heard that reiterated, that those are major themes of what you're trying to achieve. Next slide. And then the regional plan, which is voter adopted, it is a city-county joint plan, talks very specifically about transit goals and very pro-transit activities that we want to do. We want to be, we have this overarching goal to provide high-quality, safe, convenient, accessible transit system, and then some sub-policies underneath it. And those are all directly about transit. And then next slide. There's a whole slew of other policies that do talk about being multimodal, about being context sensitive in our transportation system, and that are supportive of the things that we're trying to do with Mountain Line system. Next slide. So I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about, I look at all the policies and I think, wow, there's a lot here to support the things that we're trying to do. But I do wonder, with fresh eyes, do you look at it and think, wow, in terms of achieving the things that we just talked about, there is a missing policy, or we need a modification to a policy? So that's my first question. My second question is it not a policy thing and it's an implementation practice that we need to revisit or work on modification to? And then are there just other things that maybe aren't policy or implementation, but it's a partnership we need to build? So just kind of wanted to open the floor to hear from people about how do we get the things that you all talked about wanting to get done, and what might we need to change to get there?
All right, don't jump all in at once. Just messing. Who has a thought or a comment? Or, I'll say through the lens of the city, I think the policies are there. I do think maybe some of them can be tweaked to better embrace bus transit in negotiations when it comes to rezones. And that's kind of what we're working through, as you've mentioned, with a couple of different developers and developments currently. In terms of implementation, I think it's accountability from the city manager, from the city council, from the public, from Mountain Line, holding the city accountable to the policies that have been approved in the regional plan and the policies that we have. Often you'll hear staff say that we have conflicting policies. And when I look at the regional plan, it seems pretty clear that the community has given us marching orders to mode shift and get out of our vehicles and promote all modes of travel. So I think that comes on the leadership and also having a better accountability in place at the city, a better process. And what's the third question? Whether actions are missing? I don't know. I think I kind of addressed that, at least through my lens. But others, what are others' thoughts?
I could give another example. Maybe I heard Coconino County talk about how do we expand services outside of the city of Flagstaff. So, are there funding policies that need to be put in place or mechanisms that need to be explored in order to do that? Might be the type of, direction or, feedback we're looking for in order to get to some of these things.
This is Sydney. I just have a comment to expand on that, Kate. Thank you for that. I would also say, in regards to expanding our services, expanding transportation services outside of the county, it will also require conversations with people in those outlying areas to, really identify what is it that their community members need. And I know that there have been discussions in the past around this, and I'm very new to this transportation group. So, for me, also working with those that are more seasoned than I am so that I understand what's been discussed, what policies have been in place before, what policies were created but fell through and didn't work out. So I just wanted to say that also, that for us, it's also having conversations with others, right? So the city of Winslow, the town of Williams. So, yes.
Miles.
An observation and a question I don't really have an answer to, but it was raised in the last section. How do we talk about expanding service to outlying areas and make that case when we're still looking at how to make something like Mountain Line Go, efficient and effective, and in fact looking at ways to get the basic, very complete Mountain Line service as it currently exists back to ridership levels that were pre-COVID. It just feels like a really tough case to make to the critics.
I think that's a good observation.
Other comments? Miles, I'll say I agree with you. I think we need to focus in on our base and focus in on the service that we provide and improving that and getting back to those numbers. That's something I brought up in our little breakout session as well. Okay, Kate.
Great. Well, and I think that you actually, my last slide was actually talking about priorities, but I think I'm hearing two people say we've got to focus on getting back to where we were really before we start focusing on too many other new ventures, which I think is fine news for Mountain Line staff. There is a lot going on, but I think as you guys are, I know it's a big question. So as you have time to mull it over about what is stopping us from achieving those goals that you want, if you have ideas, please send them over. If there are things we need to put into place to get the ball rolling on any of them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Heather for the final presentation.
So if I may, Chair Shimoni, my presentation alone is 25 minutes and that's without any discussion. So I'm going to suggest that the update on the strategic plan is not urgent, similar to the electric vehicles. It was more of an update. I would suggest we move that to the June agenda. I'd really like to cover some current events and feel like that would be a better use of our time if that's reasonable to you and the other members of the board.
That's fine with me. If anyone has any objections, please speak up now. All right, go ahead, Heather. That sounds fine.
Awesome. So we do have 2 other progress reports in the packet. So if you have a chance to review them and have questions or would like us to put them on an agenda in the future, please let us know. Other than that, I will swing right into current events as soon as Rhonda gets through all of the animations that I had in the presentation that I prepared. Sorry, I know it makes it hard to skip through quickly. We do have several anniversaries that I'd like to share with you, and I would like to highlight a couple of new employees. I did include their photos in the presentation since we did not send out current events prior to the meeting. So we have 3 operators that are celebrating their anniversaries. The first is Ryan Mitchell. If you'll click, Rhonda. He is a transit operator celebrating his first anniversary. Ryan is actually local to the Flagstaff area and is a tremendous asset in providing firsthand knowledge in trip planning and spectacular customer care. If you'll click again, his peer, Rosie Nez, is celebrating 7 years in her role as transit operator. Rosie is actually one of our cross-trained staff members. She also acts as an operations supervisor on an as-needed basis. Rosie is a versatile team member and we're lucky to have her with us. And our last operator celebrating his anniversary this month is Jimmy Gray. Jimmy is actually a part-time employee. He's been with us for 17 years as a part-time employee. Some of you may recognize him because he was a full-time employee at Northern Arizona University. He's always been willing to step in and help us out on the weekends, and he retired several years ago from NAU and has continued to really be a dynamic team member for us, being a great leader for his peers and a great provider of customer service for our writers. The final May anniversary I'd like to recognize is someone you all know, Ann Deno, our capital project manager, is celebrating 8 years with Mountain Line. Ann has been a key member of projects around town and is currently lead for both our CDL testing and training facility and our Casper headquarters master plan. Ann's attention to detail provides us with the opportunity to ensure projects are carried out thoughtfully and on budget. And then I'd like to introduce you to a couple new employees. If you click again, Paul Ramos has completed his training and is now working as a transit operator. Paul is actually a returning employee. He worked for us several years ago in our fleet division. Liz Vandersolmen has completed training and is currently working to obtain her CDL so that she can join the transit operators. She's actually been working for us since February, and Liz has been providing a lot of our Mountain Line Go transportation, as those vehicles do not require a CDL. And our last employee I'll introduce today is Mitch Reddy. Mitch will be working for both Mountain Line and Metroplan as a shared Montoya Fellow. Mitch is a student at NAU working on a bachelor's degree in geographic science and community planning. We have other new employees that are in our training program, but I will make sure I'm bringing those back, and hopefully in future meetings when we're in person, we can even invite some of these individuals in to meet you. Brenda, I think you can click and then I'll go on into a couple other current events I'd like to share. As we talked about or has been mentioned several times today, we continue to have problems with staffing. It did result in a need to go to summer schedule on Route 10 and reduce frequency on Route 4 early in May. This did result, Route 4 specifically continues to provide us a savings of about 1.5 full-time employee hours per week, or 60 hours. And without that reduction, we would need to continue to mandate that is overtime for other staff members. By June 20th, we anticipate to have all full-time positions filled with trained and qualified staff and hope to reinstate Route 4 soon. I will point out that wages in the private sector CDL market continue to lure our staff away at a rate of about 5% of our FTEs on a monthly basis. So on average, we're losing 2 employees a month for other job opportunities. To help us with that, we have another training session planned in late June, and our goal is to really reinforce our part-time reserves. As mentioned in the current events in April, the Arizona Department of Transportation did deny a request for a light at Phoenix and Milton Road. That light is a key part of our DCC improvements. We did appeal the decision and had our informal hearing as part of ADOT's escalation process, and we wanted to express our gratitude to our city board members, Chair Shimoni and Director Sweet, and the many staff from our partner agencies, including the city and Metroplan, for coming to support our request. Just this last week, we did receive another response from ADOT, and they are upholding their denial, but we feel grateful that this time the denial did at least offer that they are willing to work with us on alternatives. So Kate will continue leading us through that process, and we will have more to come at a future meeting. Mountain Line did participate in the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Festival at Fort Tut Hill on April 30th. We were able to go with a bus and a staff member to answer questions from individuals participating in that. We are excited to report that the City of Flagstaff has confirmed that we had at least one application for the city's TAC citizen representative, and they will be appointing Michelle James, who's the executive director of Friends of Flagstaff's Future, at a June meeting. That seat has been vacant for many months, and we appreciate Michelle's interest and time, and also all of you who helped us really advertise and recruit for that seat. I sent out an email roughly a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. We will be bringing to the board in June a recommendation to update the rules of procedure. And that recommendation is specific to the Transit Advisory Committee. And we are seeking your feedback on whether the board would like to consider a similar mechanism for appointing vice chair and, as a result, chair position. So if you haven't had a moment to look at that email and or respond, it would be appreciated. We are happy to just move forward with the TAC if that's really what the board would like, but would appreciate being able to take advantage of the opportunity if the board is also interested in similar language about the rotation of the vice chair and chair positions by agency instead of volunteers at those meetings. And the last thing I'd like to talk about is that our next meetings are in June. Ron, if you'd like to go to the next slide. The TAC will meet on June 2nd, and the board will meet on June 15th. And I am very pleased to welcome you all to our building for in-person participation at both of those meetings. For those who wish to stay in a virtual environment, we will have both meetings in June available in hybrid format. We'll talk more in June about the desire to keep holding these in hybrid format, but we're very excited to have you all back and see you in the building if you're willing and able. And that's everything that I have on my current events, and I appreciate the time that you have given us all today. It has been a great meeting full of engagement around very important topics, and we appreciate you.
Thank you so much for that, Heather. Miles, I see that your hand's up. Is that from are you stretching over there or? Oh, okay, very good.
Thank you, I was exhausted.
Great meeting, everybody, especially for a virtual meeting. I think we covered a lot of ground and we had some really good discussions and some difficult discussions. It was really a pleasure to be part of this meeting with all of you. And I hope everyone has a really nice rest of your day and rest of your weeks. And Director Mayer, do you have a comment or a question?
A quick question for Heather. I know that just about everybody's having a hard time retaining employees in this market. You brought up the losing 5% every month, which I know is devastating. Are you considering or have you implemented any type of employee retention strategy? And can you, beyond, obviously increasing pay to try to meet market? I know that your ability to do that is limited.
So we did implement a pay increase in October as one strategy for both recruiting and retaining. And it did bring us more applicants than we were seeing in the 12 months prior to that. And it did retain several staff that we heard were leaving. And for a while, it felt like that was the magic fix. And as I've said to staff here, the shine has worn off of that a bit. I also think that as things reopen, people are reconsidering life and life choices. We've lost several staff members because they moved closer to mom or to dad or to children or whatever. We continue to focus on a full long list of different options for recruitment and retention. We need to kind of revisit a couple of those. We were going to CCC every week for a while and recruiting right out of that class. That kind of stalled for a bit. We also lost a couple of mid-level management positions that also taxed the support system that we have for operators. It is all leveling out. So this sounds like doom and gloom, but it's really not. I think we're all feeling more hopeful than we have in a long time. I think the turnover for the private CDL jobs is just hard. We've lost some really great staff members and staff that have honestly said, I love it here, but I can't afford not to take that additional $5 an hour or whatever it is, and we understand that. The minute we hear somebody's looking, we're asking why. We're trying to stop that flow. We continue to look at benefit strategies flexibility of work schedule. That's actually our next big focus. We're bringing in a new software that will allow us to build more flexible schedules for our staff members. So right now our drivers have very rigid schedules. And we're looking forward to breaking those down. And maybe we attract the mom whose kids are at school from 8 to 5 because we now have shifts that fit that need. But anyways, so different strategies that we're looking at. I'd be happy to bring an update on where we're at with some of those things. I know it's been a while since we've talked through it, but yeah, we're doing everything that we can to talk to people and retain them. If we can, I just can't keep up with the pace that we're seeing in the private market.
Clearly, yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions before we do adjourn? All right, well, thank you all again so much for your time and your energy and your leadership and your participation. We very much appreciate it and wish you a good day and a good week, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Bye all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Congratulations, Coconino Community College.
Yeah. See.
It's just staff at this point.
We are still on YouTube. Rhonda, is John there?
Yes.
Okay, we're still broadcasting on YouTube.